people in as I see them. So
Sounds good.
Hi,
Right.
Mark.
How are you all?
Hi.
Nice to
Doing
see-
well. How are you?
Very well, thank you, Sal.
Good, good.
Hi, Mayor.
Um,
Back again.
Hello, everyone. Yes, I'm here to listen and to, fill my brain out with some ideas and opinions to give to you, of course. No,
Sure.
there's great meetings all along. I mean, the arts and cultures, the stores, the Main Streets all working together. I think that's great. And now I'm curious to hear about the landlords
Great.
and the owners. So
Hi, Joe. How are you?
just brought in who I'm guessing is either Mac Bell, but it's under Joe Bell. So I just brought that person in.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're just waiting a couple minutes as people join the group, but you're here, the City of Gloucester's LRRP Property Owner and Operator Focus Group. Thank you for joining us. We'll get started shortly.
I'm gonna bring
Marcy.
Ken Hecht is
Hi.
in. I'm gonna move him to panelist. There he is.
Okay. Mac, is that you under a false first name? Oh, you're muted. You're muted, Mac.
You're muted.
Oh, can we unmute Mac Bell, AKA Joe Bell?
Hang on here.
Let's see.
I can't. Joe, can you unmute yourself? There you go.
Yes, thank you. Joe Bell can unmute me.
I was waiting for you to say something really important.
Good luck. Just an enthusiastic appreciator.
Great.
It's so
Thank you.
nice to see everybody virtually. I mean, I haven't seen some of you in a year and a half, maybe two. It's
Ken,
awesome.
and happy anniversary. Thank you
Oh,
for
yeah.
spending your day with us.
Today's the big 3-6. I got to get out of here and get some roses or I'm going to be toast right after this meeting. I hope
I'm
Sage
glad
is
you're-
open. I hope
Really?
Sage is open.
We'll remind you, Ken, before you leave.
Please
that-
do. Got to do it.
So why don't we get rolling? We're going to have some people join us, but I want to respect everybody's time. My name is Sal DiStefano, Economic Development Director for the City of Gloucester. And of course, we're joined by Mayor Safatia Romeo Taken, who is on the line with us. Mayor, if you'd like to say a few words.
yes, first of all, thank you for joining us. And I hope that we are here to give our opinions, to listen. I'm here to listen. You've heard my opinions. We're here to make sure that, we succeed. You as landlords have great businesses downtown also. Some of you are just landlords, some of you are landlord and business owners and rent, and we want to make sure that the economy thrives. We want to hear your suggestions. We talk to the artist and we talk to the culture district. We talk to business restaurants and what we can do. And Elizabeth Carey's been on from Discover Gloucester. We've had the chamber on, as you know, that Jill's on here with Sal Economic, and we hired someone, which is Ann Burke. I'm sure Jill will introduce her better than I could. And just to make sure that, we're not going to just talk about it. We want to make sure that even if we do slowly, I mean, we're not going to produce miracles, but we want to produce things. And that's what we want to do. We want to make sure that we're here and we're listening and we do something. Not just, okay, let's get all these files, all these things. It's great to get all this grants and everything else, and we keep putting them aside. Well, I'm tired of that. As we all know with the COVID, a lot of you have lost tenants or are going to lose tenants, or things have changed and you can't get help in your businesses and it's hard and you're trying to survive, and and people are making decisions and you're not in it. So let's hear from you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. As the mayor mentioned, we're here with other city staff. Jill Cahill, Community Development Director. She is on, as well as Gemma Wilkins, who just joined us in our planning department. She's done a great job for us in doing a lot of the data collection and summary. So we're really appreciative of that. After the presentation, we're going to get you this some slides to review that has some of the data collection. So this is a local rapid recovery plan. Ann Burke is our consultant that we're very lucky to have. So through this local rapid recovery program, 125 communities throughout the Commonwealth are participating in this, and really is to take a look at what's happened since COVID to our downtowns and what are ways that we can all work together to come up with solutions. And the goal is to come up with up to a dozen projects or recommendations, some of which we can apply for funding, hopefully through the state, and improve our downtown and continue to be successful. So, but before I hand it over to Ann, I'd like an opportunity for all of you to do a brief introduction. If you could just state your name and if you want to mention your property or business that you represent, I would appreciate it. So I'm going to go down my panelist list, and first is Mac Bell. Mac, can you hear us?
Yes,
Okay.
Mac Bell, 44 Commercial Street, working on the revitalization of some harborfront property, foiled in multiple layers of bureaucratic challenge.
Great, thank you. Ken Hecht.
Ken Hecht, I own, my wife and I own the building at 189 to 191 Main Street, the Blue River Diamonds building. I was on the city council for a couple of years, Ward 2, and before that, a couple of years on the planning department, planning board. And I'm not mired in any permitting right now, so that's good, Mac. I've got no miring.
Thank you, Ken. Then I have Chelsea Cody.
Hi, my name's Chelsea Cody. So I'm the director of HR over at Gorton Seafoods. And so Sal, I believe you've worked with a couple of the other people on my team, but I was supposed to be out today, but I ended up coming in. So that's why I'm here today. So.
Great. Thank you so much for representing Gorton's. I appreciate it. And next is Joe McAvoy.
Hi there, my name is Joe McAvoy. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Action Inc. We own 180 Main Street here, 47 Washington, which is the Energy Building, the old school on Washington Street, and then 370, which is the shelter done on Main Street, and various other residential properties. We're also part of the group developing the Harbor Village development at 206, is it Main Street? I think I should know, right? But it's at 206 Main Street as well.
It is 206.
Thank you. Thanks, Marcy. I'm glad someone knows, right?
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. And Marcy Pregent.
Hi, I'm Marcy Pregent. I'm with Jamari Series. We have property on Main Street 186 and 7 to 11 Pleasant Street. We have a real estate holding company, and we also own other waterfront property. We have a marina, a function room, some industrial and office property on the waterfront. So we are very interested in making our downtown thrive and help my tenants who have made it through COVID and looking to get enhancements for all their customers. So thank you for doing this.
Awesome. Thank you, Marcy. And Mark, I know you're on with us.
Yes, thank you, Sal. I'm Mark Adrian Farber. I own the property at 103 to 105 Main Street, the building in which I founded Mark Adrian Shoes 45 years ago in 1975. The fourth of 5 generations in the retail shoe industry. I've been in the retail industry until my retirement 4 years ago for 50 years. So I was waiting on customers while some of my friends were still sucking their thumbs. And
great.
I still have a stake because my son has succeeded me at in the business. Literally and figuratively succeeded. So I'm here as a matter of self-interest and interest on behalf of the downtown as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mark. Rick Cohn.
Hi, I own the Cape Pond Ice property on Commercial Street, as well as the Jalapenos building on Main Street. And still actively, looking and working with other waterfront and commercial spaces within Gloucester.
Great. Thank you, Rick. I appreciate it. And I see we got Faye joined us as an attendee. We need to promote her. Jill or Gemma, if you're able to do that. Let's see. You know what? We'll get that worked out, and then we could have Faye introduce herself when she comes in. But for so moving on. So thank you for your introductions. I know others are going to be joining us shortly. But Anne, if you would like to kick us off, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Well, thank you. I'm really, I'm thrilled that this variety of property owners, sort of located throughout this proposed district are here today. And I really appreciate you participating in the conversation. Had a chance to talk to Ken a little bit in an in-person meeting down when I was last time I visited Gloucester, and a chance to talk to a few other stakeholder property owners who have unique properties that are within the district. So your opinions and voice are really valuable to this process, and we hope to factor that in. We as Sal said, we have a series of focus groups that we're undertaking with restaurant owners, office workers, retailers, other tourism and attraction type people, residents, to try to get different perspectives and to how people look and use and work and utilize this downtown area, and try to find out what are critical and important factors to them as we think forward. What we're asked to do, and this is a pretty accelerated timeline, as Sal mentioned, we've done a lot of data collection and diagnostic work around the land use and what kind of businesses are here, vacancies, who owns what, that kind of thing. There's also a survey that went out to property owners to get their reaction to how COVID had impacted them. Some of you may have participated in that survey, and now we're doing the focus groups, and we'll be continuing those conversations with other stakeholders to try to get input into this process. Over the next couple of months, we'll be working to identify a dozen or so actionable projects that we could plan out and try to identify who owns them, how are they implemented, what resources we might be able to bring to the table. And some of these don't necessarily require, some of these may not require resources, but maybe policy or permitting or other kinds of issues that are things that could be addressed on a local level. This will all come together in a report that happens by the end of August and early September. And as I said, they're intended to be projects that are actionable in the near to mid term. Some may be a little bit broader in scale, that may take a little bit longer, but really trying to see what this community desires to do in terms of how do you position your downtown. And when we looked at this downtown, and Sal, we can talk about the boundaries, but we really looked from where the cruise ships come in, the riverfront, the waterfront, up the industrial area, up to Pleasant Street, or and then back around, and we'll throw up a map, Gemma, maybe at some point, to look at some of those land use things. What I'd like to do today, we're going to have a focus group today, and I really would like to talk to you all, or have you participate in this conversation with your ideas and some of the observations that you have. But I'd like to set a couple of ground rules so that we can keep things moving along. everybody, hopefully everyone will participate, and I'm seeing Ken here on this call, and I've only met him once, but I'm sure I won't have to work hard to, get his opinion to the table. But we'd like for everyone to participate. We're going to try to keep things moving. So if we all kind of agree on something, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole and stay there and wallow around in our aggravation over a particular issue. But we're going to try to kind of, we will hear it. We'll take note of it and try to get back to people with more detail. There's no bad ideas. So even if something, you think something you don't like, we'd like to hear everyone's ideas because we think they're all important as we kind of work through what seems to be coming out here as some common themes and some things that have some bandwidth around them. And, just be nice to everybody. Don't yell at anybody while you're here in this room, even if you want to. So with that, Sal, do you want to say something?
Yes, I was just going to say, we were joined by a couple more people. Faye, are you able to unmute yourself and do a quick introduction?
Hi, my name is Faye Popolo, and I own 139 Main Street. It's a retail space, Shore Nutrition below, and an apartment above.
Okay.
Great.
So I'm
And,
gonna just ask a. Go ahead,
I'm sorry, one
else?
more. Bob Gillis just joined us. Ann, if Bob, you could say a quick introduction, and then we'll get rolling. Sorry, Ann.
That's okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. Bob Gillis, Cape Ann Savings Bank. Looking forward to the discussion.
Okay.
Thank you, Bob.
Well, welcome everybody, and this is an awesome group. I appreciate you being here. We basically, to Faye and Bob's purposes, this is focus groups with property owners. We are having a number of other focus groups with different industry groups and stakeholders in the downtown. The outcome of this is to try to identify some ideas that would translate into about a dozen projects that are actionable, projects that we want to try to implement. This plan is going to come together by the end of the summer. I know it's a very busy time for everyone, and we realize that, and so we're very appreciative of the time that you have here today. I don't think we sent this out to you, but we will send out the report of all the data that has been collected so far and the responses to the surveys, so that you can have that, for your information, and this might prompt some other ideas that come about. But today we wanted to talk about a couple things. One is to get some of your general reactions to the impact that COVID has had on your properties and your tenants. We know how many vacancies there are. We know where they are. We've kind of analyzed a lot of that work, and kind of talk to us about how you're looking at the properties that you've had, and the vacancies that you have. Sort of your reaction to what you saw during COVID. How are you recovering or responding from that? From COVID, and how can we work together to think about how we can help you, not only with your existing tenants and perhaps looking at the tenant opportunities or vacancies that you might have in your properties. And just sort of, I'd like to talk a little bit about the landscape that you're looking at right now with your properties, where you see the biggest challenges and where you see the biggest opportunities, and get some reaction to that. And then I'd like, when we're done with that, or we've sort of got your issues on the table, I'm going to segue to kind of having you put on your focus group type hats and ask you to sort of move on from there, and we'll ask a few other questions to try to get your feedback and some ideas of projects that you might undertake. So with that, I just kind of like to throw it out there for you to give me some feedback or reaction on, where you are in terms of your properties now, the stresses that you've seen, the opportunities that you're looking at as you come out of COVID. I'm particularly interested in, are you seeing, interest in your space? Are you finding this pressure on rents, or are your tenants that have managed to work through COVID, are they in a place where they are continuing to move in a positive direction? And just sort of where are your properties here? Now we're going to take notes, and we might take quotes, but we won't attribute anything to anybody directly. So we just wanted you to know that what you say here, we will not appear with your name on it in any publication or anything like that. But we do want you to tell us, how you're looking at your properties, how you're looking at the challenges you're facing now. Anybody want to start?
Yeah, I'll
I'll
go.
start. Oh,
Oh, go ahead, Marcy, you got a
no, no,
better
you,
story than me.
no, no, you go
You
ahead.
got a
and
way
then
better story. Go
I
ahead.
want Marcy to start because Ken, I don't know
Okay.
if Marcy's ever going to get a chance to talk if you start.
Exactly, that's a
Okay.
problem.
So I have a, so
Well
we're
said.
talking just, general, I have tenants all over. But if we're gonna focus on the Main Street tenants, I have a mix of, smaller restaurant, service, hairdressers, nail salons, to, nonprofits, gyms, a nice collection of, spaces. And for different reasons, people had different struggles. Whether it be they weren't comfortable, their clientele wasn't comfortable coming in, they needed some modifications. It really, I took it based on an individual basis and what the business needs were in order to go to them with the strategy and say, how can I help you during this time? Because we all need to get through it. It's much harder to acquire a new tenant than to help sustain an existing tenant. So that was my philosophy during COVID. And I have to say, I've been very busy with space, even more than just the reopening. So I've been lucky with that I've rented new space. I've had a lot of interest. I feel like people want to do things and they want to go into businesses. Maybe they don't want to commute anymore or do whatever. So they're coming up with new and fresh ideas, which is always positive. I do think where I'm struggling a little bit is office, because people are comfortable working out of the house. They're finding it's more efficient. Now, if someone has a smaller home or they have a million kids at home and they can't get things done, then it's a different, strategy. But large office space has been probably my biggest struggle. So I'm, looking to acquire that. But really, it hasn't, we took a little small step back, but most tenants are back up on speed and they've, made their headway of coming back to full potential. So it was trying, but I think if you buckled down and took it, in terms of, I might take a small hit now to have a longer term gain. That was my approach, and it seemed to have worked so far.
Thank you, Marcy. Just for clarification, we're not just talking about Main Street, so we're really taking a look at this whole district. So if you have properties
have
that
some
are
other-
along Rogers Street or on the waterfront, or we're looking to tie this whole area together
Okay.
as a district. So just
Okay, so,
point of clarification.
essentially other places, I was able to lease out a very large location, which was very, with a large real estate firm to help. So that was very positive. But like I said, again, office, I'm looking to lease, and it's a larger space office, waterfront office. We have a small function room business that obviously that took a hard hit. So now we're finding that it's coming back strong. And it's been hard to find, people to work and get that done. So we're looking to get that going again. But overall, I've had a lot of leasing in these last few months, which is positive.
Yeah, I think your comment about businesses, entrepreneurs, I mean, we in the industry, what we're also hearing is that some people have made choices about, I've always wanted to do this. So there are entrepreneurs that are sort of beginning to, look at how they can realize their own vision. Ken, you had your hand up next, so I'm circling back to you. Yeah.
Great. Well, glad to hear it, Marcy. And we're experiencing some of the same things, and that we did give a little bit of some assistance, during COVID to some of the tenants, just because their business stopped. But all of our tenants now are, in good shape. In fact, I'm really happy that Nate Cahill's, co-working space has expanded and the Mac Bell's property. So now during COVID, at the end of COVID, Gloucester went from 1 to 2 co-working spaces, which is pretty cool, So other than that, I've been working with Rick a lot on his Jalapenos building, and amazingly, the artist studios were full during all of COVID. And we had some turnover and we were really worried, and they filled up. So that was great. And so my experience has been pretty positive in terms of tenants. Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else have comments or anything they'd like to share around that, your tenant mix, your efforts to fill vacancies, what you're seeing in terms of activity or stresses on your existing tenants?
I'll put in my 2 cents. In terms of, certainly COVID took its toll on retail that was already struggling. I would say one of the things that the mayor and the city did really well was allowing for all the sidewalk activity, at least for the restaurants. And that has been incredibly successful. I think in the real estate forums and things that I've participated in, that seems to be a trend that's going to stay. Obviously, New England, we're fairly limited, but at least for the summer months, and as people have figured out how to accommodate outdoor seating and dining for the shoulder months, I think that's here to stay. And to the extent someone can help figure out a traffic and parking plan to accommodate that, I think it's only going to benefit obviously the restaurants, but also any of the merchants along any of the streets, really.
Yeah.
I think parking, just speaking personally, being a Gloucester resident for 12 years or so, the parking is an incredible challenge. It is everywhere. Somehow people still go to Rockport, even though I won't go set foot anywhere near there, for 2 or 3 months of the year. But, people will come, but you need to find a way to accommodate them. And if that's, I don't think satellite parking with shuttle buses is a great solution, but it's better than no solution. But, any kind of upland parking where it's easy and well-lit access to, the Main Street and Rogers Street and Commercial Street, it's going to be a bonus. And anywhere you put it, I think any of those side streets where people will access, parking down to the, the more populated shopping areas, all those side streets are going to benefit too. So it's kind of a win-win if you can find the land to put parking.
Yeah. Thank you, Rick. Anybody else have thoughts, Joe or Mac or others who haven't spoken yet?
We so we just have a small, 2 small commercial units in the corner of Main and Pleasant here. So one of them is the mortgage space, the Countryside mortgage space. They've actually seen a ton of business over this period. People obviously refinancing and things because of the low interest rates. We had I think there was a little bit of some of the other space, is non-profit there, and we had a little bit of challenges. We've been kind of, like Ken said, kind of having giving some assistance in that respect. Obviously, I think COVID's been a major challenge for the new spaces at 206 Main, the Harbour Village site. There's about 1,000 square foot of space there. That's not. I think the decision was made early on in the process to not finish that, to standard leave it at a point where tenants would come in and kind of put some money into it, make an investment in kind of making it their own space, because it's prime location, it's a really good spot. But I think it's been harder to lease that than we might have anticipated. Obviously, the building started well before COVID, and I think that that's something we couldn't have anticipated. So one of the things that we've been looking at is, how do we repurpose some of the space? We're considering using the center of the 3 units there. It's a small 440 square foot unit, maybe to use that as a retailing incubator space, where we could kind of work with entrepreneurs, low income folks who are interested in potentially starting their own business, allow them a chance to, test some, pricing and supply setups and things like that, potentially to perform a pipeline for other locations on Main Street. So, that's something we're working with a few folks to try to see if we can get those spaces let. I haven't got an update recently. But we're trying to think about kind of creative ways to use commercial space as well.
It's interesting you say that, Joe, because in the retailers focus group, there was a lot of interest in sort of the pop-up retail entrepreneur, doing some creative things around how do you use or repurpose some of the spaces. But the conversation was around how do you create the vanilla box so you can't just throw somebody in some giant space that
Well,
so
and I think that's one of the things we thought about with that space, because it is small, so 440 square foot is quite small. You're not going to be able to do a ton with that, but we're also figuring out, is there a way to, it can possibly even be subdivided, so we could potentially put two kind of complementary kind of folks in there as well, so we can serve more folks at a time. I know I've talked to Sal a bit about it and with Cara and Jamie at community development as well, about potentially other ways that we could leverage CDBG funds to kind of get folks set up there. We've also been talking with E4All, a group who have programs in a number of different communities, about potentially coming here as well. So we have a few different things on the chart there.
That's exciting. That I want you to hold that thought, because I want to come back to it a little bit later. Mac, is it Mac?
Mac.
I see Joe there, but I'm
Joe's equipment, and he's my son. Thank you. Richard, I totally agree with you about the importance of parking, and would like to address that the I4C2, the former Frankie Davis building, the first property of urban renewal, is Gloucester's greatest asset for parking, and that any concept of developing that property I consider to be worthy of significant opposition. I say that in the most constructive support of Richard's point to parking. I am concerned with two of our properties primarily. One is 44 Commercial Street, which got its last lobster wholesale operation. We've been doing wholesale lobster there for the last 12 years or so, but given the new quotas for China, they went out of business. And I just now have two fishermen who are new members of what we're going to call Fishermen's Co-op at 44. And we've got some very exciting plans for utilizing that high visibility property. And Anne and Sal, I'm excited that you all are working on being able to support that sort of new energy. We've got, I think, a great potential to make something happen on that exciting property. And I'm excited, Joe McAvoy, for your accomplishment. The downtown housing project that is just about online has been some challenges through the last couple of years of construction, but we're excited. It's a beautiful project, and a compliment to Main Street Plaza and the Browns Mall. And I think it's really going to be good for the hood. And so I think it's exciting that you all are focused on coming up with some formulas and resources. The 44 Commercial Street property has been plagued for decades with very challenging, multi-layered bureaucratic challenges. Perhaps and hopefully with this post-COVID opportunity, we can get the Chapter 91 folks and the Harbor Plan folks and the Fishermen's Wives folks all to have a little bit more cooperative attitude towards some creative solutions. And we're looking forward to that.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? As if not, I'm going to just kind of steer this in a slightly different direction. But thank you. This is really interesting. You're all working on your own property. Just one quick question around, we do have some vacancies in this district. I think we had, 37 different vacancies that we had identified as we look around this district. Have you all, from your own perspective, as you look at trying to fill those vacancies, are you working with a vision in mind of the kind of tenant that you'd like to see in those spaces, or are you pretty much open to, I need to fill the space? And I asked that question for a reason, because a lot of times when people talk about what it is that you want to see in your downtown, they create this level of vitality and interest, and and a good mix of tenants. That sometimes drives the conversation a little bit, and other times people just are faced with, I need to fill this space. And so I'd like to wonder how you approach filling or looking at the tenant as you look to fill your spaces. How are you looking at around you at the overall mix of tenants that are in this downtown? And it's okay to say, I just need to fill the space if that's where what your property needs to do.
I could jump in if I could. In addition to the bank, we own all the way down to Hancock Street. And, I would just say that our goal has been to rent the retail space there to retailers. I prefaced it by saying retail space. That's been our goal. I think it's been the goal of the Cape Ann Chamber of Commerce, and I think it's a good goal. I think it's important. We've been approached by potential tenants as far as office tenants, different types of tenants like that. And our primary goal has been to rent to retail, and we'll continue with that. And it's been good. And, like Marcy, I think Marcy made a good point in that it's more difficult to bring in a new tenant than it is to work with the tenant that you have. And we've had to do that. We've got an art organization as a tenant. We have a hair salon, we have a fitness studio, and obviously they struggled during the pandemic, and we work with them, and they're thriving again. And so we're very pleased about that. But I just say, really, our focus is retail in those spaces.
Thank you, Bob. I think as a lot of downtowns, and especially if they're looking at the 30,000-foot view of the world, and they look at their tenant mix that they would like to ideally achieve, trying to come up with strategies around how do you do that, and how are property owners thinking about their own spaces, and is there a willingness to kind of look at it a little bit more, at a more global level, and looking at strategies around tenant recruitment and the tenant mix that you have here. I'd like to just segue a little bit to add.
Ann, if I could just
Sure.
comment on it real quick, because we've got at least three major pieces of real, space open. You got the Santander Bank building, you got the CVS building, and you've got the former gas station, down at Washington and Main Street, right? So the Washington Main Street is, of critical, it's the entrance to our city. It needs to be a great project. And then the last thing that I personally would want to see on Main Street is like a Family Dollar or something, which would be the kind of tenant you're talking about, which is, I just had to rent it, So Sal, I don't know if it makes some sense, but it might make some sense to reach out to those owners specifically, and and be the big picture, in terms of tenant mix and that sort of thing. Because I think, are there other major holes that anybody else can think of from a retail perspective?
Those are the big ones that
You got Papagino's. You got Papagino's too, Mac, right? I think you're on mute.
Mac, you're on mute. You're on.
It doesn't say you're on mute, but you're on mute, buddy. But anyways, I think that to bring that kind of thinking, go ahead, Matt.
The Papagino's, we were disappointed. We tried real hard to work with the city and have it be one of the sources of entertainment vis-a-vis a pot shop, because we thought that was an important component for downtown entertainment, so to speak. After about a year and a quarter, we had to let that go. And I feel that was unfortunate. But I've been trying for a couple of years. My greatest desire would be to have a Life Alive or a Panera there. We've reached out. We've done every form of invitation imaginable. We have a couple of different folks that we're in negotiation with and hope that it can remain a restaurant. But the challenge for all restaurants on Cape Ann are the demographics. When folks look at the 1 mile, 3 mile, 5 mile, they come up with a lot of haddock and cod and not quite enough population. So that's been our challenge at the Papagenos, but it's a fabulous potential resource for the most exciting person that we talked to was Dean Sala. For a moment was going to move his operation there, and he would have done just a great job of making that like a family diner, function hall, whatever. And so we're hoping, and it's just a matter of time before it becomes, I think, a vital part of Main Street Plaza again. And you know, I think that the CVS spot could be way better than a dollar store. It could in fact be a whole source of cultural entertainment and resources of local talent. The folks that you've met who are in the basement of that building, if they could be worked with, have some huge potential to bring to Main Street that I would like very much you and I to put our heads together as to how they could, you know, get that in gear.
Okay.
And I agree with you about the importance of the Tallies location. And back to the I-4C2, I can't say enough how much I think we as taxpayers have already bought that property 25 times over. It's bought and paid for. It's a combination between 400 parking spaces or 300 parking spaces and a beautiful public resource of open space with open vistas. And I think that we want to build around that asset. And I just want to stress that.
Yeah.
And
Mark, you had your hand up there. Thank
I
you.
just want to ask Ken, I want to make sure I heard you correctly. You said the last LAST thing you'd want to see in the CVS location would be a dollar store?
Yes.
Well, compared to
No,
some
Mac,
of the ideas,
excuse me, Mac, I was talking to Ken. I apologize.
I'm
I was
sorry.
asking Ken the question. Thank you. Yeah, I concur wholeheartedly. And I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. Thank you, Ken.
Yeah, and
Thank
I'm
you.
not saying the owner, who I'm very familiar with and have done a little bit of consulting for, is going in that direction, but it's the kind of thing, Sal and Jill, I think the city can represent that voice of tenant mix.
Yeah.
Where I don't think that any of us individually are in a position to talk to other, I mean, I'd be happy to be on board with that, about the importance of tenant mix, because if we do it right, you know, if I always like to look at it as, if I owned it all, what would I do? Right? And that's sort of the greater good kind of thing. But, you know, if we get some really great retail tenants for the CVS, the Santander, Tallies, and do something really great at I-4C2, then, you know, we're on our way to really, you know, having a big jump here. Should be great.
Well, as a great segue, Ken, because I wanted to ask you all to start to think about the places that you've been that have really, that commercial districts that you love, that resonate with you, and you know, sort of the characteristics that they have, and how does Gloucester sort of stack up, you know, to those kinds of places. And sort of as you think about that thing, I want you to talk about what would, if you owned it all, what would be the project that you would do to that would rise to be one of these 12 projects, or a few projects that we should be putting on this list? What would make this downtown area, and I'm not just talking about Main Street, but the whole area, a more attractive to your tenant, to your existing tenants, to potential new tenants, make your properties, put your properties in a position to really, continue to be successful in downtown Gloucester. So I see Mark had his hand up. Joe had either stretching or you had your hand up. Yeah, I think you had your hand up. Ken, I know you have thoughts, so maybe you start with Mark, and then Joe, if you want to say something, Ken, and anybody else wants to chime in. I'd love to hear you think about, what resonates with you and how do you think Gloucester stacks up, what's missing, and what would you do? What would be what if we could do this, if I owned everything down here?
I wanted to mention that our neighbor to the south, Beverly downtown, had what turned out to be a very successful initiative. And they offered grants to potential retailers to come in. They now have a specific downtown organization called, it's part of the national organization called Main Streets. And they have a full-time person concentrating just on the downtown. Beverly has, with their initiative, come up with a record shop, a skateboard shop, a comic book store, multiple women's boutiques, artisan boutiques. The lure of the grant seemed to be a hook that people were able to take advantage of. I think we might consider an initiative like that possibly.
Yeah, I think you raise two good points. I mean, I think I'd love to get a bunch of ideas out here and then kind of circle back to this concept of some entity that sort of wakes up every day needing to own this downtown. But let's get some. I'm making notes of all of these. We'll come back to it. But Joe, did you have some thoughts on what would you do to improve this environment? It could be in the public realm. It could be in the private realm. Let me know what you're thinking.
I think something similar to what Mark mentioned. I mean, I think, obviously what's needed with the large number of vacancies is going to be kind of a large number of folks kind of coming through all at the same time. And, it's not likely that we're going to attract any kind of like out of town stores or stores that exist to open in a new location. So I think the idea of focusing in on small businesses, new businesses is important. And I think if we can have programs in place that are going to help people, get the technical assistance that they need to get their businesses off the ground, some kind of, assistance in terms of paying rent, so that, not only, so people can get established and can understand kind of like what it's like to run the business. They can, people who might have a high barrier to entry in terms of not having a ton of money or a ton of resources can start out and try something. I think that's important. And we just as a bit of background, we're a community action agency. We run programming that's designed to help low-income folks lift them out of poverty, and we got a lot of programs related to housing and education and training. And one of the big needs that we see again and again is a lack of living wage employment in the community. And traditionally what we've done around that is train folks to be nursing assistants or commercial drivers, or to go into the trades and things like that, help them get their high sets or the GEDs. But in our most recent strategic plan, we're kind of pivoting a little bit to say, what else can we do? We've been doing that for 20 or 30 years now. So what else can we do to kind of actually create more job opportunities? And for us, a big part of that is, inspiring entrepreneurship, folks to kind of be their own bosses, but then also potentially to employ others. And, if we can provide that assistance to folks, if we can kind of get some kind of, agglomeration going where there are multiple stores, where downtown, where Main Street or downtown becomes a destination again. People might be going to do 3 or 4 things at once. The lack of that, the kind of the number of vacancies, the number of turnover has really, compounded the issue for tenants. And so I think that the more we can do to kind of get more folks into the storefronts, to get them the assistance that they need, it's just going to have a spiraling upwards opinion, is my opinion at least. The only other thing I would say is, I think at the Santander location, I think something to consider, because I know they did it in Salem, is they have a small boutique hotel right on Main Street and right on Essex Street. And that, it's kind of mid-century modern style. You get folks actually coming, staying right in downtown. That kind of leads to more footfall along. They've got a pretty big parking lot at the back as well. So I think there's potential there. You've seen how well that the hotel has done since they've come in. So there's definitely demand for more of that kind of thing.
That's great. Thank you, Joe. Other thoughts on, what other things, what about the physical environment? How does downtown, and I'm not just talking Main Street, talking about how downtown feels to you as a visitor or as people who come or are interested in locating their business, or as patrons or customers who come down there? Are there things that we should be thinking about from a project perspective that would enhance the environment to make it more conducive to or helpful for you to attract, bring new opportunities to your buildings? Ken, you had your hand up, so.
Yeah, the main thing I think
Take
that
it away.
we have to look at downtown as a district. We have to look at it more like Portland, Maine. And, you can look at it like Middle Street to the water sheet. So it's really Rogers, Maine, and Middle. Middle's been repaved, it's more historic. But really, when you look at where the upside is, the upside's in Rogers Street. Now, the water side of Rogers Street is in the DPA. And we're just passing the window now where you can, get with properties being taken out of the DPA. So it's another 5 years until we get get a crack at taking any properties on our downtown waterfront out of the DPA, if that's what people want to do. They may not want to do that. So I think that personally, the focus needs to be on off the water side of Rogers Street. Off the water side of Rogers Street, which is the back. It used to be the rear end of all the buildings. The beautiful part of the buildings were on Main Street, and Cape Ann Savings has done a beautiful job of improving their buildings on the water side. So as we go down the street and we look at what can we do that doesn't get us, involved in the DPA, we can really look at the CVS building. We can look at, the TD Bank building. There's all kinds of opportunities there to kind of bring that together and figure that out. One of the things I think would make it really awesome, which would be wildly expensive, and Mike Hale would kill me, the head of the DPW, is to put those power lines underground. Because the power lines from Walgreens on down, all the way past Gorton's and all the way down, they don't exist. On the boulevard, we don't have power lines. The only place we have power lines is in the heart of our district, really from the Tally's building to Walgreens, unfortunately. So that would be a tremendous public project that I think would go a very long way. And also Rogers Street itself is 44 feet. It's probably got an extra 6 feet available for sidewalk. Imagine the off the water side of Rogers Street that has a widened sidewalk where you don't take your life in your hands. And all the restaurants would be sort of like the top side, but it would be lined with umbrellas and people would be walking up and down Rogers Street. Add to that the I-4C2. So I really see Rogers Street as a critical function. I also see, and some of the people on the planning board have talked about that, is to raise the height limit to a moderate limit in downtown so that more housing can be put in, more condos, more apartments, that kind of thing. And we'll help to create our own population, and will help the feasibility of projects on Rogers Street to be significant projects. So I'd say first floor, off the water, retail, restaurants. I'd love to have a boutique hotel come in. That'd be amazing. And finally, I really think, unfortunately, Cape Ann Brewery closed, but as you'll notice, Beverly has 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 breweries that have just popped up, and they're a real magnet for activity. There's actually seminars that go through how to revitalize your community with microbreweries. So having that, we've got the Santander building and we have the CVS building that are sitting there right now, which might represent, good opportunities for these types of uses. That'd be something, Sal, that I'd be happy to work with you to pursue and see if we can attract some breweries to downtown, which I think it'd be a screaming home run.
Thank you. Chelsea, those of you, I apologize for those of you who I just have your name, so I sort of forget you because I'm not looking at your faces. So Chelsea, Faye, or Bob, would you like to add any comments or suggestions? But if you own this downtown, what would be your project or projects that you think would add value, that would be have an impact on your property, your tenants, your ability to lease your properties, or do your business in the downtown? Your customers, your employees, what do they need to see?
Sure, and I can interject there. The most important thing that I find, I live on Main Street. I live in my apartment upstairs now. I look onto Roger Street from behind. Aesthetically, it's not very pleasing at all. You know, I'm right across the street from the I4C2. Yes, it's a parking lot, but I think we could have even done a better job at laying that out as a nice parking lot with greenery and trees and making it look pleasant. There's a lot of dumpsters that I look at every morning when I wake up. Just the overall aesthetics of Main Street and Roger Street needs to be pleasing to the eye, and it definitely is not. You go to other communities and they work very hard on this. You know, the building, I'm in the middle of these two buildings from behind Roger Street. You were talking about that, and they look horrible. All they need is a paint job. And you know, you can't tell the people that own businesses next door to you to get their, you know, just can't do that, you know, paint the back of your building. They should be able to see it. That's part of their property, you know. We take pride in our property. And I think more people need to do that. And I think when you go and you visit a town, like let's say Newburyport or even Beverly, my daughter owns a business there, you know, they're working very hard at making their main streets aesthetically pleasing for people to come and shop. I've owned my building for 10 years and I've never got fair market value for it. I've always, in my travels and sales, have asked other businesses, boutiques and other type businesses, you know, we have a space in Gloucester. We'd love to have you come and open up a business there. And I have to tell you, honestly, that they've said, oh my God, no way. I wouldn't do well there. We need to make it pleasing for other people to come and want to shop here and want to do business here, like all the other cities around us. I don't understand why we haven't been able to do that. And maybe it's because of, you know, all this bureaucracy and red tape that we can't get things done because of that. So I just feel that that's necessary.
Chelsea, Mayor, would you like to speak?
First of all, I4C2 is not a permanent parking lot. We got a waiver to make it a parking lot so we can self-sustain it. It was bought so we, wait a minute, Faye, wait a minute. So I can explain, it's not at you I'm targeting. I'm saying I would love to do wonderful things there, but if it's not going to be ours and we can't continue the waiver, then we're spending money that's going to be taken, ripped apart. And you know what? When Carolyn Kirk, when we purchased that, we purchased it to develop, to make something that was going to comply with the DPA, Chapter 91 and all of that. And we said we needed to sustain it in order to clean it up and do it. And we used it as a parking lot, one. Second of all, I agree with you on a lot of things, but remember, we gave HUD money in grants to people to downtown to change their businesses around. Some took advantage. Look at Virgilio's, the bricks and stuff like that. People, it's your responsibility. I don't mean to be crude, but you know what? When we have HUD money out there for you to be responsible to take it at low interest or no interest loans, to do that, to improve. I can't force people to stay open. I can't force people to sweep in front of their curbs. I can't, you know what they said? Well, we need to beautify. We put all hangers and plants. And we also, at the cost of the city, put box windows for flowers. And we only asked each owner to water them. They couldn't even water them. So we're here for you and we don't mind spending the money, but you got to take responsibility too. And you as landlords got to tell your tenants too, please, because if that box, those flowers die, you look like you can't even take care of your own business inside. Why would I go inside?
I agree with you. I agree with you totally.
And so that's what I'm trying to say is if we're going to do something, we need to do it, but we also need to encourage each other. Why can't, is there something why you can't help do it? I mean, and it's okay. Don't attack me by saying this, but remember, We all try to work with Lawson's. Okay, we try to work. In order for us to sell ourselves, we have to improve ourselves. And we're all willing to do that. But when you have two on a lot, how can we, and we all offered to do it free, to go in, to change, to do things. We modeled, we had volunteers. That's how committed so many landlords were. And yet, if you can find ways that we can do that, my staff is on board. We'll jump with you. You know, I'll get the mop and shovel. We'll do anything you want. You know, and we tried to do things down there, but lobsters have to go there, the cars. And if we can't pave it because of the water, it's so many different things. So many different things. So give us the ideas. Figure out how we can do. If I have to knock or have the wood council or any of us, so what can we do? The empty buildings, you know what? I would love to buy them myself and finish them. It's sad that CVS
Okay.
and all of those are gone. But you know
Okay.
what do we do?
Thank you, Mayor. We have a little less than a half an hour left, and I'd love to hear from some of the other folks around. Mark and Chelsea, I'd love to hear from you. You had started to say something, so please comment, and then Mark, you next after that. So talk about specific project ideas that you have that we should be considering in this downtown.
Well, I mean, when I think about this stuff, you know, my biggest problem is, you know, I'm competing for talent with downtown Boston. And so having Gloucester be a place that people want to, you know, like where younger people want to come and stay is, you know, something that I'm looking for so that I can sell that. So, I mean, I liked the idea of the breweries, but just something that you know, is more focused on a little bit of a younger generation. And I love that, you know, we have a lot of the art community and things like that, but even making more open spaces or, you know, and I live in downtown Salem and they do a lot of stuff to promote the art community and just, you know, they're kind of switching out the artist row and things like that all the time. So just something that makes it appealing to a little bit of a younger generation is something I'd be interested in.
Thank you, Chelsea. Mark, how about you? You have some thoughts?
Yes, since I've been around downtown in 1975, 45 years ago, there's been a project that's been talked about for decades, maybe even before I got there. And not an especially expensive project, but one that makes us, would need us to turn our heads around, really literally turn our heads around. And it was, we probably have at least a couple of studies about it from city planners and designers who gave it a thumbs up and recommended it. And we gave it a trial, which failed because we tried to make the trial on the cheap. And that project that I'm speaking about is reversing Main Street. The trial was done on the cheap about 25 years ago because through no fault of the DPWs, the signage was very poor, if at all. Drivers were confused about what to do and where to go. And the island in front of Tally's Corner was not adequately, the logistics were very difficult. During the summer, hundreds of thousands of cars come down and, you know, go sweep around Rogers Street. And many visitors either don't know or can't be bothered taking a left onto Hancock to come down Main Street. The studies that we've gotten said that it would be a natural flow to come down Washington Street and hang a left on Main Street. That's what's supposed to happen according to them, but we never gave it a fair chance because people were irritated and aggravated and confused after 10 days to 2 weeks.
You're not the first person who's brought that idea up in the conversations we've had along the way. I'm wondering if Gemma, if you could, you know, we started to develop as we've had some of these conversations. We started to talk a little bit about, you know, some areas of focus that from which projects may emerge. And I was wondering, I'd like to kind of throw up sort of this concept. But before we get to that, going back a little bit to you, Mark, we get your comment about, and many of you have mentioned Salem, you've mentioned Portsmouth, you've mentioned Beverly, you've mentioned, a number of communities that the one thing that all of these communities have in common is that, all of those communities have downtown organizations, management district organizations that are in place. And they may take a model of a Main Street model, or they may be a business improvement district model, or some other kind of model that actually creates an entity that has that is professionally staffed, that's working off of a program that all the property owners and businesses agree on, and help fund and figure out how to manage these districts, and to wake up. Literally, I always say it's the organization that wakes up every day thinking and owning and worrying about what happens here. So, and identifying those kinds of priorities that don't fall in the public realm, that really fall outside of what you should expect to get from what your government services offer, but yet are important to making sure that some of these things happen, whether it's a retail recruitment or incentive program, or programming, or arts and cultural types of things, or marketing. Those are the kinds of activities that all these programs do. I mean, the Beverly program, I know Jen Wallace really well. She does an awesome job, has been there for 25 years. If you look at Church Street Marketplace in Burlington, they're one of the oldest bids, in Portsmouth and Portland, Maine, are older and well-established bids that manage their downtown. So I'd like to kind of introduce that concept to you all as property owners, and because at the end of the day, when we start to think about these projects, we think about who owns these, who's going to take the responsibility of making them happen. And it's really, truly, usually a partnership. In successful cities and towns that I work with all the time, they're kind of a partnership between the public sector and how the private sector works in cooperation or in partnership with them. So I'd like to put that idea in your head to try to come back, and we probably will have some further conversation about that with some of you. But maybe I don't know if you have any general reaction to that concept, or how, if you're all, some of you are familiar with this, because I see some nodding heads, and you've mentioned all of these communities in your travels, and things that you have observed. Somebody's responsible for those activities, and they just don't happen by happenstance. So Gemma, can you pull up that slide that we can talk a little bit about some of these project areas that are beginning to emerge? And I'd love for you all to kind of react to some of these things. These are certainly not the end all be all, but they're kind of like, and you've touched on many of these things. And so just sort of pulling it out here and seeing if some of you could, you can all read, so I'm not going to read them for you, but some of these things that are beginning to come out of our conversations, and would love to get some reactions to you. And when I talk about this last one is district management, that's one of the things that have just referred to, and how that might happen, or could that happen in your downtown. The other thing I think we've talked about, maximization of the visitor customer base. In a lot of our conversations, I'd actually like to add also the local customer base, because there's been a lot of conversation in some of our other focus groups about buy local, and efforts to try to tap into the to the local customer, as well as your tourist community that comes here. So just sort of any general reaction or feedback? Are we on the right track as we look at sort of focus areas? So certainly these are just preliminary buckets of work, but talking about how some of these projects might flow from these focus areas.
Yeah, from a placemaking point of view, I want to applaud Joe and his group for the incredible mural of the golden lobster on the side of the building of their affordable housing project. It's really cool. I hope you've all had a chance to see that. It's amazing. And I think that from a placemaking point of view, we have so many walls that are just begging for artwork downtown, and we're an artsy city. I think a murals program, even there was tossed around a name for it, Inspiration Gloucester. It would be an amazing project from a placemaking point of view. Many cities across the United States and all over the world have these, they even have tours, and they've made this a big part of of their placemaking is the public art. But this wouldn't even be public art. This would be murals on the side of private buildings, which don't really need any approval from the city. You know, So-
If anybody's interested in that topic, I would encourage you to take a look at what Central Square has done in Cambridge. There's some amazing murals, and Worcester has a powwow that's a national organization that's come in and done gorgeous murals in their downtown on private and mostly private properties.
You don't have to go that far. Salem, crushing it. Lynn, crushing it. Crushing it.
Ken, we would welcome that at 103 Main Street. We have a very large stucco wall, which is barren, and I think that's a fantastic idea. I don't know why I didn't think of it 25 years ago.
Well, I spoke with your son about it, and he wanted to get an old boot. Like he even has a concept in his head for it, which make it historical to Gloucester, and you've got plenty of history, but have it be accretive to your business. So, but have it be historic and cool. I'd be happy to talk to you about that.
Any other thoughts or reactions to any of this, to this list? Are we missing anything that is glaring to you? If you had to rank or put in of the number one priority or number 2 or 3 things, areas that you think are important, tell me what those are.
I just want to say that I think everyone has brought up the parking and everyone thinks the solution is in I-4C2. If that isn't the permanent solution, then we don't want to leave that as an idea, and we want to move forward because parking is, I would say, the number one thing that people are concerned about. And it's all these other communities that we're discussing have, I don't think we need a huge parking garage, but I think we could do a few smaller spots that we have around the city that would, be sufficient for what our needs would be. So I think that is one of the more important top ideas. And then there's also, all the other items, beautifying Main Street, which I'm all for, but just wanted to bring that up.
We were looking at a map that looked at this, it was kind of older information, but it was looking at utilization of parking, and along, in the publicly held lots, but there's a lot of privately held lots that are less utilized, and wondering about the potential for some of that parking to be reutilized in a more shared way. And a lot of places are looking at that rather than building lots of new lots, that maybe there are ways of looking at existing inventory and how is that utilized.
Exactly. And the merchants could put, from 5 to 10 p.m., whatever, this lot is donated from Santander Bank. Please treat it with respect and enjoy. So I think that it's possible. There's some really well located lots right in downtown that 2 or 3 of them could be recruited, I think, to do just that.
Mac, you look like you wanted to say something, or Joe. I can't see everybody now. Maybe we can take this down, Gemma, so that we can see, or if everybody can see each other. So there you go.
And
yep, Mark.
I want to submit a tweak of one of the modules you listed. I think it was number 2, parking. Historically, we know that Main Street parking is at a premium, and because it's where many of the stores are, because of that, the limit has been traditionally about an hour for a 1-hour renewal. Unfortunately, over the decades, there's been a huge amount of abuse of the parking on Main Street by people who make their living on Main Street, be it property owners, store owners, or even employees. And that's one of the reasons why I have so little hair right now, is because I've been tearing it out over the decades with people abusing it. And, we retailers who are conscious of it, and we aspire to speak to owners and employees, but usually to no avail. I think if we had a greater enforcement of the parking on Main Street with, maybe with a, it's 1 hour now, and I think you can renew for another hour. I'm not talking about tagging a car that's over 15 minutes or even 30 minutes. There could be a grace period. God forbid we should tag a tourist or a visitor or a shopper. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about cars that the meter gets fed hour after hour after hour after hour. And we need to have a method, which I don't think we've had up until now, of better enforcement of those people who abuse the parking limit.
Thank you. I always have this little PTSD occasion because I'm early in my career. I worked in Holyoke and I had to deal with Oscar Bale's shoes. And Oscar had 2 parking spaces in front of his store, and he parked in one and then complained that everybody else didn't have enough parking in front of his store. And I would say, but you parked there yourself all day long. And it was one of those things. For 5 years, I had this conversation with him. And so I don't know if it's a shoe industry related thing, Mark, or what's the story.
No, on behalf
But-
on behalf of the retail shoe industry, I heartily apologize for him. That's not good thinking.
I don't think it's a problem unique to Gloucester. I think that man, I always say parking is never done. It's a managed experience, and how it's located, where it's located, is it affordable, is it well maintained and promoted appropriately, and thinking about how you deal with your parking as a system so that it isn't just the one sign for 15 minutes in front of your store that's going to make it work. It's really thinking about it in a bigger way. But thank you for your comment, because I think it's important to be reminded of that. Other thoughts or suggestions, Ken? You're looking like or Joe?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think the idea of the management, whether it's having a main streets or something, I think that makes a lot of sense, especially kind of thinking about now how Gloucester is separating out with kind of Gloucester Crossing and things like that, and there's going to be those kind of larger businesses or kind of chain stores like CVS are kind of going to be moving out of the main streets, and it's unlikely that we're going to be attracting similar stores back. So that'll become more of like a destination shopping type thing where there's a more kind of unified approach to creating a destination where people actually kind of want to come and shop in a way that maybe like a CVS wasn't as interested in being a destination, but interested in footfall. And then I just think the other thing about, something that wasn't listed, and I'm not sure whether it's part of your plan or whether it's part of the, part of the kind of CDBG planning, but around, some of that micro enterprise assistance, whether it's help with kind of, establishing kind of rent payments for certain types of businesses, or, micro loans for improvements to spaces and things like that, or technical assistance programs. I mean, if that's something that could be named, I think that'd be.
Yeah, I think like TA and things like that are mentioned in there, but I think that I guess a question I'd like to throw out to all of you, or because there's a lot of conversation in our business about, okay, people are coming out of COVID, lots of vacancies exist now, and some places are, rethinking about how do you activate that first 20 feet of space on your ground floor, and thinking about it in not necessarily the traditional ways that, a tenant's going to come in and rent the space. Is there, do you think that there's a general, and not to speak for all property owners, but how open are most property owners, do you feel, to sort of like the pop-up opportunities or different kinds of terms of leases, or different kinds of ways? Some people are taking percentage leases, some people deal with sort of smaller spaces, or thinking about ways that activate your spaces with maybe other things other than traditional retail, even like performance spaces, or places that that are arts and culture oriented, or other kinds of things that bring foot traffic, bring other retailers, bring restaurants, even pop-up restaurants. Some places are playing around with pop-up restaurant types of opportunities too. Throwing it out there.
I think for me, I'm with a new business, especially, I'm very, people come in gung ho and they want to sign a 3 or 5 year lease. I don't sign 3 or 5 years leases with new businesses, because I always say to them, let's start out with a year, or even, if it's new and they really, and then we'll reevaluate it after the year and we'll give you options. Because if it's not working for you, it's not gonna be working for me. And you don't want to put that kind of obligation on a new business, starting. And then I think, during these times, it's better to have a tenant. So say maybe it's not your first floor retail space on Main Street, but if you have another space, why not be open to a pop-up idea to see if it will work and grow? I mean, a lot of tenants that we started with were very small businesses that became very successful, and bought buildings and grew bigger because they, were an incubator here in this building. So I think you have to open your eyes up to have those opportunities unveil themselves over time and give them a shot.
Thank you.
And can I mention one quick footnote, and I promise I won't
Sure.
make any of the suggestions.
No, please, keep them coming.
When we upgraded signage some years ago, maybe it was a decade ago, I'm not quite sure. I think it was a gross lost opportunity because we did not make the signage, whether it's to parking, harborfront, restaurants, downtown shopping, we did not make them large and bold enough, and they're missed by a lot of visitors. So I think that we have to rework that and make sure we know that we don't want to compel people to have to put on their reading glasses in order to see our signs. They have to be very large and bold.
Thank you. Yep, so back.
Hi. And two things. One, I want to compliment the Boulevard effort. It's exceptional, of phenomenal standard. And one of the things we talked about a few years ago is a large conceptual objective of having a harbor walk from Stagefort Park to Eastern Point. My sister wrote a note that is specific to the fort to the State Fish Pier. And if we could conceptualize the accomplishment in my lifetime, when I grew up, the boulevard was extremely underutilized. If we look at it today, it's every citizen's greatest gift to think about taking a walk on the boulevard. To expand that walk from Stagefort Park to the breakwater as part of our cultural resource, I think would serve us for generations to come, number one. Number two, in terms of parking lots, right now, the city ordinances, particularly if you hoped to charge, which if you do, you'll be very lucky to ever break even. But annually, there's a huge deterrent of a bureaucratic process required if you want to have a parking lot for which you would get $10, $15, $20 a parking space per day, whatever. It's a $500 fee. It's several meetings. It's a lot of public debate as to whether you should be allowed to do that with your private property or not. It's classic bureaucracy at its worst, not benefiting anybody's encouragement of creating parking. And last but not least, I'd like to read a letter which is in the draft form, if I could, for our incredibly high exposure property adjacent to the St. Peter's parking lot. That's 44 Commercial Street, which we've been struggling with, I would say, for 30 years. And we're struggling with it because I can't stress enough how difficult the harbor ordinances are in existence for what you can do along the water's edge. But this is the idea that we're presently working with, all of which is totally not doable unless we create, through your leadership, Sal and Mayor Safadia, the sway to make it happen. Fishermen's Co-op at 44. 2 local fishermen, each successful operators of their own boats, are going to dock and operate out of 44 Commercial Street with adequate room for storage of gear, traps, and trucks. One captain focused on fish and scallops, the other focused on lobster and sea urchins. Lobsters, scallops, fish, and clams, wholesale retail, and eat in the rough weekend component as part of a public mercado. Food trucks, possibly a local smoked fish operation to join in, and hopefully an oyster seeding operation utilizing some of the existing lobster tanks and harbor waters farming stock for oyster farms throughout New England. All will benefit from participating in weekly farmers market, flea market options, utilizing existing lobster tanks at all presently on the property. Operators are applying for local grant dollars to build out rehabbing interior with retail fish market, community kitchen space, public bathrooms. Also, parking permitted by city during season to service local businesses at all. Also, with a venue for occasional industrial weddings, anniversaries, and celebratory events, all to help cover taxes, utilities, and overhead. Last but not least, our Chapter 91 license should have a component allowing education. All potentially very exciting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd love to talk to you further about your project. Maybe we can do this offline because we
Appreciate it.
have
Look
about
forward
5
to it.
minutes. We'll be in touch. So we have about 5 minutes. So I'm going to ask Jill if you'd like, or Sal, or who, I think you're the only 2 city folks still on the line, or Gemma, to wrap this up. First of all, I just really want to thank you, sincerely thank you for your thoughtful input into this process. And, you know, if you're willing, I mean, there are a number of points that I would like to circle back to some of you. The idea around some sort of management entity, I think is going to be important. Certainly property owners need to support that notion. You know, a lot of the other, I have 16 pages of notes here, and I'm sure Gemma does as well. So we'll be sort of digesting your input, and I really thank you for being involved in this conversation. And it's not the last conversation, I hope, and I really do appreciate you taking the time to give us your thoughts and to talk about your ideas. There's some really great ones here, and we're excited to include them. Sal, Jill, do you want to close it off there?
No, thank you. You said it all, and we appreciate it. We appreciate everybody's time. I know I speak to several of you off and on when you have vacant properties. Please feel free to send me your information. I do get requests and happy to pass them on. But your partnership is critical for us to succeed. We're all in this together. We've engaged with several focus groups. This one has been my favorite by far because I think this group is full of people that really care and have a vested interest in the success of Gloucester and the future, and taking what we've learned from COVID in the struggles that we all encountered and how to succeed in the future. Please be in touch. We're going to get back to you. There's a deadline on this, which is in August. So this is a short, quick run, but it's very important, and we want to come out successful with this. So a lot of great ideas. We'll be following up with you. Thank you, and we'll follow up with an email. Ann, did you want to say something?
I was going to put my phone number and an email address in the chat, but I don't see it in there right don't see the way for me to put the chat in there. So maybe in your email, Sal, if you could include my email and phone number, and others have reached out to me to set up a more in-depth conversation, you know, please feel free to do that. I'm more than happy to set up a time, and I love coming to Gloucester, and I love going to the fish truck and buying fish when I'm there. So thank you again, Jill. And anything you'd like to
Just thank you all for your time. This is incredible, and thank you, Sal, for getting this incredible
Thank
group
you.
together.
Awesome. Everybody have a great evening. Thank you.
Good seeing everybody, really. Great
Good
to
seeing
see
you.
people I haven't seen in so long. Talk to you later.
Take care.
Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Bubba.